Ciao, buongiorno. Are you ready to cook like an Italian? I hope so. I'm Chef Jan, and I can't wait to share these recipes with you today because nothing says Italian like the perfect meatball, the perfect Bolognese, the meat sauce, and homemade fettuccine, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm very excited to get you in the kitchen and we'll cook like an Italian. I want to thank my wonderful sponsors, Queen Creek Olive Mill in Queen Creek, Arizona. This family has 100 acres of olive orchard, thousands and thousands of trees, and they have 16 varieties of olives. The olive oil is absolutely fantastic, and I want to thank the Arizona Farm Bureau because we are doing farm to table today in the very sense of the word. So we're going to start with this beautiful Queen Creek olive oil today. We are starting with Momma's meat sauce. This is the most beautiful meat sauce, and I think after you make this, you're going to discover that you're never going to need another meat sauce again. Okay, so it starts with a little bit of olive oil. You always want a hot pan and hot oil before you put your veggies in. So the next thing we're going to do is add an onion, and so many people have such a problem figuring out how to cut an onion, so I'm going to give you a really great tip. Of course, this is a small sweet yellow onion, but what you're going to do is peel it excuse me, and then you're going to cut it straight down the middle, right through the stem and right through the root, but you're never going to cut through the root again. That's going to hold your onion as you cut. So we're just going to slice off the stem, fingers in, gripping your knife properly, thumb and middle finger on the heel of the blade. And now look at this. I'm just following those natural lines of the onion, and I'm letting that root hold it together for glue and keeping my fingers in, and then all I have to do is turn it just like this, and look at this. Perfectly diced onion. Every single piece is exactly the same. It's not all over my board. I'm not even crying because it's happening so fast. So that's the way to cut an onion, and I've got one right here all ready to go. Next thing is garlic. Now, I don't mind the smell of garlic on my hands at all. Of course, I'm an Italian girl, but a lot of people do. So I'm going to show you a really cool gadget that we use in the school a lot, and everybody sort of grabs it because they want to use it. This is called a garlic cube. It's got a minced side and a slivered side. You put your little container in here. You put your clove of garlic right here, and guess what? Done. You've got minced garlic. That is pretty incredible. So I'm just going to pop that right in there. We're going to do 3 cloves of garlic today. This thing is just amazing because you don't really have to, it's effortless. And it minces it up pretty great. The other side, the slice side, is perfect for a steak. Okay, there we go with the garlic. All right. The next thing is my flavor bomb that very few people use in their meat sauce, but I love it, and that is a leek. I love cooking with leeks for stews, for soups, for sauces. It imparts just a beautiful, sweet flavor. The problem with the leek is it's very dirty, and a lot of people don't know how much of it to use. So I generally cut off the woody part. And then what you want to do is slice it right down the middle and open it up, and you're going to find lots of dirt and grain, and that's just the way leeks are. They're very dirty, so just rinse them off under the sink and you are good to go. So I've got my leek right here. I'm going to crank this up a little bit. All right, next comes diced carrot, and you notice that I'm dicing everything pretty similar. You want everything to cook evenly. Celery, great flavor to add to your meat sauce. And celery is just like that onion. You're just going to follow the natural line of the celery. So let the celery do the work for you, just cutting those off, and then you're just going to turn them around and chop them nice and fine, okay? So that's how to do celery. We've already got that in there. And then I'm going to use some fresh basil. Always use fresh basil if you can. Dried basil is good for certain things, like maybe a tomato basil bisque soup or maybe garlic bread, but if you can use fresh, always use fresh. So I'm going to just let these sweat a little bit and get those softened. Crank it up a little bit more, and then I'm going to add my meats. So I've got ground beef and Italian sausage, hot Italian sausage. I had a sausage factory in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were lucky enough to be awarded the contract for the Super Bowl when it was in Tempe, Arizona. So that was kind of a thrill. So I know our sausage is really good. This is store-bought sausage because I closed my factory many years ago, thinking about bringing it back every day, but you know how that goes, right? So I'm just going to mix this all together. This is a beautiful basis of a Bolognese sauce. Now, once that meat is kind of chopped up and ready to go, I'm going to add my tomato sauce. So I've got my homemade tomato sauce here, but just find a nice tomato sauce that you like. If you can find organic, it is really important because it makes it so sweet and so beautiful. But I'm going to add my tomato sauce right in there, about 32 ounces, okay? And then a little bit of tomato paste to give it some thickener and some sweet. And some red wine. I laugh at this because this is how my grandpa used to drink red wine, out of a juice glass, right? That's what you do. You drink it out of a juice glass. So that's going to go in there. Now, there's something missing in here, and I'm wondering if you know what it is. I've got all of my veggies, my meat, and my tomato sauce. What's missing? What's missing is salt. And there's a big reason why I'm not putting salt in my sauce yet. I'm going to tell you that when we come back, and we are going to start on my Momma's meatballs that are so succulent inside and juicy and so Italian. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Cook Like an Italian. So we started our Bolognese sauce, our beautiful meat sauce. This is my Momma's recipe, and oh, it's looking so, so good. You know what? You don't need to cook pasta sauce all day long like in the old days. You know, I got gravy going all day long. I got my sauce going. 45 minutes and you have the most beautiful sauce. And I'm going to tell you when you know it's done is when there's some dark oil that comes up, bubbling crude, like the Beverly Hillbillies. That oil will come, it's a little bit darker. And then when that happens, it is done. You turn it off. I still haven't added the salt and pepper yet, and there's a big reason why. So we're going to wait on that. Now let's make the meatballs. These are my Momma's meatballs, and these are fantastic. They're moist and juicy on the inside, crispy on the outside. When you make them, you can put them in the oven or you can cook them on the skillet. I like cooking them in the oven because then they hold together really, really well. So here is how you make my Momma's meatballs. Turn this down just a little bit. Okay, we're going to start with the ground meat. So I've got some ground beef right here. We're using a hot Italian sausage. I love hot sausage because it gives it a good flavor. You could use the mild if you like, but absolutely love the hot. Just gives it a good kick. Now, here's secret number one. Your meatballs are always going to call for chopped onion, right? You can throw those onions in there, but if you really want to enhance the flavor, saute the onions in something beautiful like the Queen Creek olive oil. Saute those onions. What happens is all the bitter and the crunch goes out of the onion and the sweetness comes through, and that sweetness is going to make all the difference in the world. You want to cool them down after you saute them. Next goes in some Parmesan or Pecorino or Romano cheese, whichever you like. The Pecorino cheese is a little bit different than Parmesan. Pecorino is newer, a younger cheese, so it's got a little bit more of a bite. So if you prefer that, go ahead and use the Pecorino. Otherwise, a nice Parmesan is good. Breadcrumbs. You want to use a nice Italian seasoning breadcrumbs, okay? 3 eggs. I have 14 chickens at home on my farm in Arizona, so I know the price of eggs are crazy right now, but I'm very fortunate that I've got girls that are busy at work every single day. I've got this beautiful olive oil that I absolutely adore, and garlic. Little bit of garlic. Now you can go ahead and saute the garlic along with the onions if you like as well. I'm going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and some fresh parsley. And here is my second secret. Add a tiny bit, a quarter of a cup of water, milk, or chicken broth. You would not believe what that's going to do to enhance the soft flavor of the meatball, the texture. It's just going to be so melt in your mouth. How many times have you had a meatball that's really super firm, you know, and kind of just too dry? Well, if you add a little bit of that, you're going to be in great shape. I'm going to mix this all together. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be Jan. I'm going to be Chef Jan. I'm going to be the Italian girl. And I'm going to mix this all by hand. I love mixing my pasta dough, my meatballs, my focaccia dough, everything by hand, because then I get a good feel. Secret number 3, never overwork your meatballs. The more you press that meat together, it's just going to get tough and firm. You want a nice gentle mix. Just make sure you're incorporating all of those great flavors. I love cooking with the Queen Creek olive oil. It's extra virgin. It's an award-winning, beautiful liquid gold. The Arizona Farm Bureau has taught me so much about the produce that we're using in this today. And the nice thing about Arizona is that we have 300 days of sunshine every year. You know what that means? Planting and harvesting every single month. When the rest of the country is freezing, Arizona is producing the country's lettuce, leafy greens. Can you believe that? In a place called Yuma, Arizona. Yep. Okay, I'm just incorporated all those great flavors. I've got my sheet pan all ready to go with some parchment paper. Like I said, I prefer cooking them in the oven, but you can cook them on the cooktop as well. Again, when I'm making my meatballs, any size you like, they're not going to shrink too much because I had some pretty lean meat. Whoa, those are pretty big. What do you think? Too big? Yeah, not for an Italian kitchen, right? So I'm going to finish rolling these up. These are going to go into the oven, 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. I'm going to finish rolling these up, and when we come back, I'm going to get the pasta machine out. We're going to make homemade fettuccine, and then we're going to put our Bolognese, our meatballs, and our fettuccine all together for a wonderful Italian meal. Okay? We'll be right back. Welcome back to Cook Like an Italian. So the Bolognese sauce, the meat sauce, is on the stove. The meatballs are in the oven getting ready to come out, and we are going to make some homemade fettuccine to go with this meal. There's nothing easier than homemade pasta. It's flour, egg, a little bit of olive oil, salt, and water. Sometimes you're going to make a pasta that doesn't have egg, but we're doing that today because I want a nice light pasta dough. So let me just check on this, and I'm going to give you my biggest tip that I could give you for meat sauce. Okay, look at this beautiful bolognese. This is cooked perfectly. That dark oil had come up from the middle, so I know it's done. I turn the stove off completely, and now, and only now, is when I'm gonna add the salt. And I'll tell you what happens when you add salt too early. As tomatoes cook, they become more acidic, and salt will increase that acidity. So let the natural sweetness of the onion, the tomatoes, all of that happen. Don't salt it at all, because as it cooks, it gets more bitter and acidic. You know, you've seen those recipes where people put a little bit of sugar in their meat sauce. You should never have to put sugar in your meat sauce, ever. The reason they do that is because their tomatoes became too acidic, and they're trying to compensate. Never have to do that. I would just really want you to make this sauce and always add the salt at the very end once it's done and the cooking process has stopped. So I'm going to set this aside. And now the meatballs, as I mentioned, are in the oven. Let's make some fettuccine. It starts with a couple cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to add 4 eggs to this. Sometimes a recipe calls for 6 egg yolks. I just think 4 eggs is sort of perfect. That beautiful Queen Creek olive oil, the estate oil that is an award winner, a little bit of salt. Now, I am not adding the water yet, and I'll tell you why. What I want to do is really blend all this together and then add the water as I need it. Look at how lovely and gentle this is stirring up. If I added all of the water, it would turn into a big hard ball of pasta dough, and that's not what I want. So I'm just going to stir this together. Now I can see that it's starting to get dry. So I will go ahead and add I'm adding a tablespoon of water at a time. So you'll keep kneading this, mixing this, until it forms a nice dough ball. So I'm going to set this aside, put these aside, because I've got my dough all ready to go. This is what you want your dough to look like. It doesn't really need to rest like a sourdough does. One of the things that you really, really need for pasta dough, if you're going to make it out of your homemade pasta machine, is you need a lot of flour. You don't want to have the dough stick in the pasta machine, and you just want it to be very, very floury. I'm using my flour wand here. It just adds a nice little rain of flour so I can control that. Make sure that I've got lots of flour on there. Now, I want to make my dough manageable for my pasta machine, so I'm going to cut it in small sections. I'm going to sort of make it as much of a rectangle as I can. Now, this dough is light and airy, but it's still a little moist, so I just want to get that flour. You can never, don't worry, you can never overflour your pasta. It's going to go in the water, in a boiling water, and it'll be nice and starchy and flavorful. So here's the formula for your pasta machine, and everybody should have one. It's such a blast. 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So I'm going to start on 1, which is the widest part. I'm going to bring that through. Okay, now I'm going to go to 3. And what's going to happen as I'm doing this is it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I want to do is cut it down. You always want to make your situation manageable. And I can tell that it's a little bit moist, so I'm just going to give it more flour. And now I'm going to 5. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. That is the golden rule. There, it's beautiful, very thin, but it's not. I want to go 1 more, and I'm going to go 7 instead of 9. So it's a feel thing, you know, you can decide. Okay, it's really starting to get pretty long. And there's your pasta dough. If it just gets too thin, you know, all you do is just start over and and put it through the machine. No big deal. So I'm going to cut this. Now I've got my 13579. So now I'm going to take my crank out, put it on the fettuccine, and then I'm going to run that through. Make sure it's very floured. And here we go. Homemade fettuccine. Look at that. It just couldn't be any easier. And you know what? There are some really neat pasta drying racks, but what I love, because they can tend to stick, so get a sheet pan with lots and lots of flour. Make sure you're separating that dough because it's just so delicate. Really pack that flour on, and then that's where you're going to put your pasta before it goes into your boiling water. You just want, it'll dry, you know, in about 5 minutes. It'll just give you the right consistency to put in that water. You're going to get your big pot of water boiling with 1 tablespoon of salt in there. You really want to salt it. I'm going to continue to finish making the fettuccine. We'll put them in water. We'll get our meat sauce, our meatballs, and we'll have a beautiful Italian lunch. How's that? Okay? We're cooking like an Italian. We'll be right back. Okay, we are ready for our big Italian meal. Everything is done. The meat sauce is beautiful. Remember, I salted it at the very end when all the heat was off. I wanted to show you something too. I created these a number of years ago. These are called spatuloons, and they are fantastic because they're made out of bamboo. But I just wanted to show you, they've been cooking in meat sauce all day, and look at this. They don't even stain. I just love them so much. You can find those on my website. They come in a pack of 3, and they're just delightful. They're for righties and lefties too. Okay, let's put this together. We've got our meat sauce all ready to go. I like to line the bottom of the bowl with a little bit of sauce. Oh my goodness, my mama would be so happy that her daughter learned from the best. Now I'm going to add a little bit of that homemade, oof, look at that fettuccine. Just drained it. I added a tablespoon of salt to the water. When you make homemade pasta, it's only going to take about 2 or 3 minutes to cook, and you are good to go. These are going to melt in your mouth. You could do the spaghetti or the fettuccine on that pasta machine. And then I'm just going to finish it off with a little bit more sauce. Oh my goodness, look at this. If you're going to stir it, you want to stir it very, very gently because that pasta is super gentle, very fragile. Add a little bit more sauce to that. And then, to make matters even more delicious, we're going to add those yummy meatballs. Now the meatballs have been cooking in the oven for 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. And that looks beautiful, so let's just grab these meatballs. And how about if we just pile them right on top, shall we? These are jumbo meatballs. You can make them any size you want, but I do think that a nice big meatball, as delicious as this is going to be just great. And then the last thing I want to do is get my mama's cheese grater out. 90 years of cheese smell in this little box. She brought it from Italy many, 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 many years ago, and I've been using it ever since. And there we have the most exquisite Italian dish. Homemade meatballs, homemade fettuccine, and homemade Bolognese sauce, all ready to go. Well, I'm going to have to dive in, you know, just to give it a try. Oh, it's heaven. This is a weeknight, every night meal right there. Homemade fettuccine. So good. thank you so much for letting me share my Italian heart with you. I want to thank my wonderful sponsors, Queen Creek Olive Mill, for providing the beautiful olive oil, balsamics, dips, olives, you name it. And also the Arizona Farm Bureau that has taught me how to live healthy and beautiful and delicious from farm to table. In Arizona, we have produce and great things growing all year long. Give this recipe a try. You'll find it on my website at jandiatri.com. And we'll see you next time when we cook like an Italian.